Hello, hello, beautiful people, mi gente bella. Welcome to another edition of Santana Says, where we talk about everything from roadblocks to relationships, everything in between, and the overall journey of life. I'm excited as always to bring you another edition of the show, and also just to be back, period, okay? Because life continues to life, y'all. So those who are sticking with me, I appreciate you, absolutely. And anyone who's new, welcome, to the community, to the world of Santana Says, and all these great things that we like to get into. I'm happy to give you, a great recap, and then of course go into some new things that we're doing. But I do want to shout out the supporters. Let me start out with that, because I keep taking breaks that I don't mean to. They're not always planned. Some of them are planned, some of them are unplanned, and it has caused the shows to not be as frequent as they were in the past. I was already like every other week, but then it started looking like every month. Then one time it was like every other month, but we still active, we're still active. We are still on our road to 100 episodes. That is still the goal. And we're working our way. But I have several people that have come up to me and said, I have not seen a Santana Says episode. What's up? I appreciate you so much. I love that you care. I love that you support, and I love that you're paying attention, so I definitely want you to know that, hey, I hear you, see you, love you, and I'm here for you. And so here we are, we are back at it. So for those who can see me, and for those who are listening, it is this episode, even though might come to you in the month of May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month, it is an homage to Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Okay, so it is being recorded at the end of it, and it is my homage to it. But Sexual Assault Awareness Month did take place in April, and even though I might not have been here, as usual, girl was busy, okay? I was definitely doing quite a lot of things, and so there is some things that I want to make sure that I bring attention to, but we are about to go into one of my favorite months, which is Mental Health Awareness Month. So we are on the cusp of Mental Health Awareness Month and wrapping up Sexual Assault Awareness Month. But also, we had my babies, y'all, on the last episode. I freaking loved that. It was so good. If y'all didn't get a chance to listen to that, please feel free to go back. It is such a stark contrast from like the first time they were on. I mean, I already love when they came on, even then, my little babies, they were young, sharing their little thoughts. But they have definitely evolved, and they said it themselves. They were like, oh, how many times did I say like, or, the first time they were on? I was like, girl, please, like, you're already way more polished. You even being willing to like speak in front of everyone and not lose your cool or lose your nerve. You already got it. But it was funny. They did critiquing themselves because they have now done so many other things in the world that they pay attention, to how things come off and how they look, and how they sound. But you could definitely tell the difference. So there was definitely one time where I brought my daughters on an episode, and the most recent episode is years after that. I think it was like at least 2 years maybe since they had been on. So it is awesome. You can definitely see their growth because, yeah, we are in year 3, and I had brought the girls during year 1. And so, yes, y'all have literally been rocking. It's been crazy to say that this show has been around for several years, but I'm so excited. I love it. I love that it's become a household name. Like I said, I'm glad that people recognize it, look for it, and appreciate it. You know what I mean? That you're gaining something from it. So we gonna always keep it going as a result. But Sexual Assault Awareness Month, y'all, speaking of, it was definitely a great time. I loved the opportunity that I was most grateful for is the shout out to the school that I work at. So I work for an organization where I am the clinical lead therapist. And so I'm the therapist there, but I'm at several different schools, one of which is Collinwood. I actually shout out to Collinwood in Cleveland, Ohio. I also work at Digital Arts, do some work at Davis. And then I also serve students in what is known as School of One. So here in Cleveland, that's like a semi-virtual option. But the students do come in person. They just don't have to come to school every, like all day, like how they traditionally do. And so they're able to come for like a few hours, mostly do a lot of their work at the house. But a lot of it they get done when they're there. They move at their own pace. It's beautiful, but that's another school that I also serve. But at Digital and Davis, we're actually one of the schools that are going to be merging next year. I got the chance to do my Sexual Assault Awareness Month presentations, which I love when schools allow me to do that. For the past 4 years, though, I had mostly done it at Digital Arts. because that was, where I was primarily employed at. It's where I was serving. And so I just, mostly did my work there. But being able to now do it for another school was just, more amazing. I had never had the chance to be in front of those students. And so I want to do more work also at Collinwood and all that. I know that we had talked about maybe getting in the works to also do some work there. But my good sis, Angela Flowers, she actually was there recently. She's also a past guest and does amazing work in our community. She actually recently went up there, and I think it was really great the work that she was able to do and like pour into the students, because unfortunately for Collinwood, it's one of the schools in our district, which is the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, that is also merging with another school, but they're merging with their rival school. And as a result, their school is going to cease to exist. So I know it was worded that the schools are being welcomed by other schools and that there are no schools that are closing. But I just think like that's interesting wording, but closings are definitely happening, and there are definitely students, not just students, teachers, staff members that are losing their jobs. There were about 300 jobs that were announced that folks are being laid off from. And y'all, when I say heavy, definitely heavy. Working in the school system is not for the weak. But with this happening, oh, yes. You could definitely see it. I'm sure you can look up the hashtags, y'all. If y'all are not coming to us from Cleveland, you can look it up and know we've definitely made the news at this point. People have definitely been protesting. People have definitely been working on making their voice heard. And I mean, we're trying, I'm saying as best as possible. We are facing, though, a lot of debt, that needs to be rectified. It's just really difficult, though, when administrators we know are getting raises in the midst of this deficit that we are facing. It's hard when we're seeing certain like offices still being, like still opening up, when we're seeing certain other things being built. So it's like to know that all these people are losing their jobs in the midst of it just does not, sit well. And the students are feeling it for sure. And one of the main ones that have been protesting are the students themselves. And at one point, they were very upset because they weren't actually given time to speak. Most recently at one of the board meetings. And so they, or at least it came across that way, right? Because I know that the board also, I actually know people personally that are on the school board, so this is not a jab to them whatsoever. I definitely know that they have hard jobs, and I know they're probably making the best decisions they can. But I'm just saying that I see both. So what I mean is this isn't I'm not bringing this up to say that I feel one way, towards the other. I just think that it's just difficult to see both sides. The fact that difficult decisions have to be made because of funding, and because of budget. I would say in this case, I mean it is public school, so they're funded by the government. But I'm saying that it is difficult to see that, and it's difficult to see students affected. It's difficult to see teachers losing jobs. It's difficult to see teachers having to be transferred to other places when they were just making names for themselves. I know a teacher that had done incredible work on the socio emotional learning side. So they were the SEL coordinator at a school, and they were forced to transfer. And now that means that teacher is going to have to start completely over in a new place when they had just found a home, when they were doing such great work, when they were so well known by the students. These are the people that that my heart goes out to. I mean, I can't see that and not have some kind of emotion evoked, from that situation. It's hard for me not to feel something about that. But I get that we're trying, right, to do what is the best thing that we can do. But I definitely think that the students are feeling it the most. And of course, teachers arguably, of course, as well. And so I just definitely think that, students and staff are, of course, very much affected. And so it is a very interesting time to be in the schools, but I am part of two schools that are merging together. And so those students got a chance to hear from my presentations this year. And I love not only that I got to do the presentations, but the feedback that I got to receive this year. I feel like because more individuals got to hear it, it really gave me confirmation that that is something that I want to see more of, is more presentations on the areas of interpersonal violence like sexual assault and domestic violence, but also just like trauma, mental health. It isn't that these topics aren't talked about. I mean, I definitely don't think they're talked about enough. You know what I mean? Just because we don't have enough time. You know what I mean? You need outsiders to come in and provide that kind of education because teachers already got enough on their plate. They already got enough things they need to cover They need to prepare students for all these graduation tests. So they're not necessarily going to be able to work it into the curriculum. And to be honest with you, teachers, there are some teachers that I have seen that I think your intentions are good by working mental health into your curriculum. I think it's amazing when teachers do that. I haven't always seen teachers do it the right way, though. I won't lie to you. I have seen folks try to take on mental health topics and it not land well, to be honest. And I want you to know, teachers, that that's not, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't necessarily have the background for it. Like, I'd rather you partner with someone like myself who maybe has the background and who wants to. Because, by the way, I love doing it. You know what I mean? So, like, for me, it is not a task. It is absolutely the entire highlight of my career when I get the chance to do things like that. So I would love to be able to help out. Most recently, Dr. Raquel Martin did an incredible little like coverage of this woman who was on the Joe Budden podcast. And she was also talking about she was talking about being unlicensed and how maybe it's better for you to seek the advice and counsel of a person who is unlicensed because they don't have to worry about, abiding by the code of ethics because they're able to do things more liberally, and because they can help you more effectively. But I want to go ahead and use my own platform to join Raquel, Dr. Raquel, and say that absolutely not. Are you kidding? First of all, it is a slap in the face to those of us clinicians who worked really hard to get our licenses and have to do a lot to maintain them. So so that's always been my issue with coaches. I think that coaches are great and there's a great lane for life coaches and, people who do coaching work. But I need you to recognize that that is the work you're doing, first of all, right? That you're a coach and you're not a clinician. So I also took, very big issue with that. And anytime like a coach trying to impersonate themselves as a therapist or as a clinician, yeah, I'm going to take issue because that is not something you have earned the right to call yourself, nor is it something you have earned the right to practice. You know what I mean? Just quite frankly. So, we should all operate within the lane that we are operating from. And so she did say that. She definitely was saying that it would be better for you to maybe like seek counsel from folks where you can get some of this like liberal work, and that clinicians only have licenses to diagnose, and so they only need it for insurance is the kind of thing she was saying. So for those of us who have not seen the video, she was saying that you only need it for insurance purposes. You know what I'm saying? So the license doesn't really hold weight. It's not really important, and you just need it to diagnose folks. Yes, best believe I do need my license to do that, and my license gives me agency to do that. It also gives me the authority with which to do that. I also, in my full-time job, that's primarily part of the job, is that I'm one of the only ones, as one of the only therapists on staff, who can provide the diagnosis, and I work with other individuals who are not able to do that, but they use the diagnosis that I give out to inform the work they do. So it's very much important. It is very much work that I can only do under my license. It is not simply the only reason why I hold the license, So like, there's a lot more to that. So, we gotta watch the misinformation, that is given out and who we are getting our information from. It's unfortunate to me. It's very sad because Joe Budden gets a lot of listeners, y'all. I mean, I would love the chance to be able to go on there, you know what I'm saying, and like join the amounts. I mean, I got quite a few listeners on here, y'all. I would like to think that, y'all out here, you can help me also like correct it. But he has quite a few given his status, as a celebrity. And so it hurts, you know what I'm saying, to know that he brought somebody on there and she's cis. She's supposed to be cis, you know what I mean? She's a black woman. She does have her doctorate, though, by the way, so shout out to my doctors. But we got to know that doesn't make her a medical doctor, okay? She has her doctorate. That does not make her a medical doctor, does not make her a medical professional, and it does not make her a mental health professional just because she holds that. But cis was going off. But cis was not being cis in that moment. You know what I mean? Like skinfolk and kinfolk. Like it does not mean that. And so I'm sorry, but my good sis, I do need you to know that was misinformation that you were definitely spreading. And anybody that listened to that, please know that is, the furthest thing from the truth. But there are folks like us who do love to, do this work. We do love to educate as much as we can, and it is joyous to be able to do it. And so when I was given the opportunity to do my Sexual Assault Awareness Month presentations this year, I was especially leaning into student because I don't get tired of talking about young people. You know what I'm saying? My most recent reels, that I was sharing or highlights from my recent episode, I was talking all about how I advocate for the youth, y'all. And let's not forget that one of the main reasons I love to do that is because your brain doesn't stop developing until you are 25. Okay, let's keep it in mind. So prolonged adolescence is real, correct? And so as a result, but the age of consent in Ohio is 16. So, we do have babies that are supposed to be making responsible decisions. And I'm not saying that they don't hold any capacity with which to do that, but do they have the full capacity with which to do that? No. Yet they find themselves in situations where are making decisions, are participating in romantic relationships, and in some cases sexual relationships, but they're still young and they still are forming their own identities, their own perspectives, their own ideas of things, yet they're still engaging in these things at the same time. And so those things can get very confusing. But as a result, when an older person who does have more capacity than the younger person takes advantage of a younger person, especially in a sexual manner, that is always going to be the thing that I want to bring awareness to. For as long as it is still true that we have children who are sexually assaulted, for as long as there are people who are being sexually assaulted, I'm going to always join my voice amongst the advocates who want to take a stand against that. And what I reminded the students this year is that every 68 seconds, a person is assaulted in our country. Every 9 minutes, that victim is a child. That data is not perfect. It's only based on information, research and aggregate data that we're able to collect. It's also from the brave and courageous folks that are even willing to let us to even disclose that they have been assaulted. So it is not perfect data. We also know that RAIN is not a perfect organization, that people have gained data from. But in general, sexual assaults are still happening way too often in our country. And in general, children are being abused too much. That is still true. And for as long as that is true, I will not stop fighting against that. I will not stop bringing a voice to that. And I will not stop educating others about that. And when I'm, in a room full of young people, I was so impressed, moved, and like so heartwarmed by the fact that you could hear a pin drop at some of the times when I was sharing information, about this, about sexual assault, about how this all ties into consent, how this does affect our ability to, face trauma, how this is all tied to your mental health. Those kids were locked in, y'all. All right. As they like to say it, they were locked, and I loved it. And it was amazing not only to have that experience, but it was also amazing to have other people witness it. I can't tell you how many teachers also came up to me themselves and were able to say that either they appreciated the presentation that I was putting on, or that they had faced the things that I was presenting on. Right. And so that's another reason why this work matters. You know what I mean? That's another reason why I like to shine a spotlight on it, because, there's so many survivors, those of us who are out there. And it's like, in my case, survivor of domestic violence, but of violence nonetheless, you know what I'm saying? And a person who has faced abuse, you know what I mean? Because we love to throw the word trauma around a lot. Yes, a lot of us have faced trauma. It is very difficult to honestly live your life without having faced some trauma at some point in your life. But abuse, that one is also unfortunately way too common. But I won't lie, I have had to have debates with some clients about assigning the word abuse to certain things. There are certain things that warrant abuse, especially when there is a pattern of mistreatment and a pattern of behavior that is taking place, and when there is harm imposed on a person, when their safety is threatened, and when their agency has been taken away, when power and control are being used. Yes, those are elements of abuse, you know what I mean, that is happening. But sometimes we also encounter negative situations. I think I'm not blanking on her name, but she's known as the capacity expert. There's another cool therapist online. She does a lot of work with this too. She will talk about how, sometimes we assign we give credit a little bit too much to certain things. We call a little bit too many things triggers. Sometimes we kind of maybe increase the level of severity that some things are. I'm with that. I don't think everything is abuse. I don't think that everything is negative, but I do think that far too often we face it and we don't necessarily name it. And I think there's other times where we, you know, over exaggerate it as well, right? Like both of those things happen. Just like when I'm talking in the world of assault, do lies happen? You know what I mean? But does that happen often? Absolutely not. You know what I mean? And I love to also bring awareness to that, that like, despite the fact that a lot of us think that, you know, people are not truthful when it comes to these things, the majority of people are not lying when it comes to their assault. I mean, people just do not take joy in doing that. And fabricating something like that never goes well. It often does not go well for a person. So they're, most of the time people are not, you know, out here lying about it. But sometimes we do assign to, you know, like certain things a little bit too much instead of seeing it for the negative thing that it is. Because some things are just also unhealthy. You know what I mean? And some people suck. You know what I mean? Some people are just jerks. You know what I mean? Some people are a-holes. And so like, you know, and sometimes we, you know, label that as abusive when we might have had like just a negative interaction with a person, or, you know what I mean, when we might have just been insulted by someone. And it's like, I don't want to necessarily categorize those kind of things as abuse. That was a debate that I did have with a client. They were really upset with me. I was like, they had a negative interaction with a lawyer, you know, and we that's the other thing. Lawyers, they, you know, tend to be sneaky. You know, like they tend to be a little conniving. Like it's kind of how they win cases. You know what I mean? Especially if there's criminal defense attorneys. I mean, yeah, that's kind of part of the game. You know what I mean? They have to be, they're not always, they they have to defend people that in some cases have done malicious things, and so that sometimes come with malicious tactics is what I will say. Not always, you know what I mean? I know that's not everybody, but it does occur. And so sometimes, you know, the interact that happened in this case was negative for the person, but they tried to call it abusive. Like I feel like, yeah, that was very abusive what they did. And I was like, yeah, I mean, not necessarily. It's not, but should it have happened? Absolutely not. And should we be exposed to that kind of mistreatment? No. You know what I mean? Like it sucks when, you know, as you know, like as members of humanity, you know, when we mistreat one another, you know, when we think that that should be the go-to, and that our goal should be to make someone feel worse, you know what I mean, in general, or like make them feel less than, you know what I mean, the way that they should, you know what I mean, we're not trying to uplift one another. But some people are also just not in good enough places to do that. I'm be honest with y'all. Like a lot of people that are very walking around unhappy, angry, you know, or upset, there's a reason usually behind that. And that was also part of the conversation I was having with my young folks. Like, y'all, trauma presents itself in many different ways. You know what I'm saying? We often, you know, laugh. You know, like we've said, there's some people that present with that anger. I'm actually really been loving actually watching Kevin Hart and his Funny AF, you know, on Netflix. If y'all haven't seen the special, I'm all for it. I am a fan. I have been watching it and I love it. But on there, people are talking about real things. Part of the contest was that could they incorporate some of you know, current events. They actually weren't tasked with like talking about the pain they've experienced. It's just that some people, that's just naturally what they're going to talk about, you know, as they were talking about their stories. That's what I was going to say. They were supposed to talk about their stories, however, and a lot of those times the stories carry pain, you know. And so like if we can channel that, you know, into a way that we can deliver it more lightheartedly, absolutely, you know what I'm saying, can we, but just recognizing that those things take place. And I was definitely telling the young folks about that, you know what I mean, about how it is still very real, you know what I mean, the sexual assaults that happen, it is still very true that kids are vulnerable. They just continue to be, because we have taught our children, and we often continue to teach our children to listen, you know, to obey, to not defy, you know, and to respect. And, you know, respect is something that we should definitely give out, but respect should be earned. But a kid doesn't know that. You know what I mean? A kid doesn't know how to decipher that. You know, a kid doesn't know who deserves it and who doesn't deserve it. They're not going to necessarily know that. Like to them, as long as you're an adult, you deserve for me to listen to you. And kids that are in high school, students that are in high school, young people that are in high school are also still kids. They're teens, you know what I mean, at the end of the day. And so like they're, you know, as a result, they are still very much able, you know what I mean? Like the capability for them to be mistreated and misused is still high. It is very high. And even and even when it's not just the adult-child relationship, right? Even when it's not just like the boss-employee, you know what I mean? Any type of like power and control dynamic. Even when it's not just like administration and then citizens, because I feel like we get mistreated all the time in our country. You know what I'm saying? The way the way things are going. But even when it's not just that dynamic, children have a hard time navigating relationships. Period. You know what I'm saying? Like it's hard to know. Some of us still don't know, y'all. You know what I'm saying? Like, what the heck is a healthy relationship? You know what I mean? Like, I have tried my best on this podcast, right, to even offer what that looks like. But if we're honest, it's still a very difficult thing to do. And it's very hard for us to look past certain qualities of a person when we care, when we want to be with that person, when we really crave companionship. And I was giving credit to one of my, actually I had two different situations with clients. One of them was that somebody was in a relationship with someone, y'all, committed relationship, but the person, sure enough, was being unfaithful, was talking to someone else. But I don't think that the problem was just the infidelity. The problem was that, I asked the person, did you find out the information from the person offering that information to you, or did you have to discover that information for yourself? And sure enough, were forced to discover it. So I think that here now we're dealing with two different issues, right? It's not just the infidelity, but the dishonesty that came with it. And this person was still very much debating whether or not they wanted to be in the relationship with that person still. I think for me, it would have been a bit more clear cut, but maybe that's different, right? Like I have different boundaries and I get that and I honor that. But I definitely think you deserve more than that when a situation like that occurs. Are you allowed to give that person grace, right? And maybe like still give them a chance to change their behavior? Absolutely. But they need to recognize both errors that were committed here, right? It's the fact that you were unfaithful to the relationship, but also that you were dishonest about it. But I had another client who was coming to terms with the fact that they're actually growing, you know what I mean, and evolving and improving. And now their new issue is that when a person makes them feel good and safe, they feel like this immediate attraction to them. And they kind of wanted to like work through that and feel like they're not immediately jumping into a situation, right? And that, why do I automatically like develop feelings for a person because of that? Why can't I just, like appreciate something for what it is? But the thing is, y'all, that's still very much normal. I think I'd rather us feel that safety is attractive, that just like, like like those, what initiatives that came out that like consent, can be sexy and it should be sexy. So should safety. You know what I mean? Like safety should be sexy, y'all. It should be a sexy concept. It should be the thing that turns us on. I don't want us to be turned on by toxic behaviors, you know what I'm saying, and unhealthy ones. I would much rather you be turned on by the opposite, okay? Somebody that makes you feel good, somebody that makes you feel comfortable, somebody that makes you feel like it's okay to let your guard down, somebody that makes you laugh, somebody that when you telling them intimate details about yourself doesn't make you question, does not respond in a way that makes you feel like you need to question yourself, you know what I mean? Or like, I don't know, maybe I was wrong, you know what I'm saying, about that, or like maybe I shouldn't have felt that way, or maybe, whatever it is, but that you're just able to openly and honestly communicate with that person. That is an attractive quality. That's what I'm turned on by, you know what I'm saying, me personally. So it's just like, I think it was awesome that was their new conflict, you know what I mean, that they were in. But I think that, it's beyond natural, right? We all crave companionship in our world. We definitely want to be with someone that certainly makes us feel good. But I definitely think if we can add that element of being with people that make us feel safe, it is an excellent thing to do. Now, sometimes, do we need to know that because of it? Sometimes we can mistake that though, for romantic attraction and like, there we go, where we're ascribing something that doesn't necessarily deserve it. That could be taking place. Like sometimes we may think that because of it, that automatically means that we feel something for that person, when really it might just be flattery or appreciation that we're feeling instead. Like it just makes us feel, good around that, and it's positive. But it's still a good thing to work through, you know what I mean? Because at least it means that we are in a different place in our lives when we can finally start to be attracted to things that are different from our past, and when we can finally start to seek out things that are good for us. Because that's always my goal, y'all, is for us to seek more good, to want to be surrounded by more good, and to eventually lead better lives, more positive lives that are good, that we feel good about, that we're proud of. And so I had such a great time, you know what I mean, like having those conversations with young people. It of course ignited my desire to want to do that with more folks. I just was like, I've been, debating whether or not I really want to take that plunge into doing that full time entrepreneurial work. But man, I haven't been feeling more of an itch to do so than I have now, y'all. So like, you're just gonna have to send up some prayers for me that will go well, because I very much want to. I'm very much in a place where I want to do more of the therapy work and more of, going into the schools. And it's already been part of the plan. It's just something I want to make sure I really put more effort into, you know what I'm saying, more fuel behind. And so I'm really excited to like take that step. But also I am very excited to be able to cultivate more, like more community work around that, and to be able to build more awareness, especially because lately in our world, y'all, a lot of things did take place. And so even Dolores Huerta, for those who may not know, but she was one of, that's the problem, one of the survivors that came forward with Cesar Chavez. And she did mention that very close to the tender age of 96, she released a statement saying how she was sexually abused by him. And most recently, I also took the plunge, y'all, of looking at the Netflix documentary of Michael Jackson, who has a new movie out, okay? You know what I'm saying? And apparently his nephew killed it, y'all. I haven't watched it, heard about it. Jafar apparently, he took his training very seriously. He apparently trained for years in order to emulate Michael Jackson's steps. So he definitely did his uncle proud, apparently. You know what I'm saying? With the work he did. So shout out to him and shout out to that. If you're gonna support it, by all means, please do. But my problem was is that I took the plunge of actually watching the Michael Jackson documentary, because it was interesting. It was like a chain of events. I was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, which is a really dope place. If you have not seen it, if you ever find yourself in Cleveland, you may want to check it out. And Michael, I was looking at his, monument thing that they had for him, whatever it was, the thing they had in his honor, y'all. And they were mentioning how he was acquitted in the past of his case. And I remember thinking like, ooh, I wonder what happened with that. You know what I mean? And like, because as a result, it kind of like absolved him, obviously, of those things. But I remember very vividly when those rumors of Michael Jackson came up. And I remember thinking like, yeah, what happened with that? Because I mean, I've gone off on this show about, I don't know that I went off completely about Diddy. But it might have got mentioned is what I'm saying. But yeah, Diddy is certainly someone that is not at fault, obviously, for what he's done. R. Kelly either. But Michael Jackson, he's interesting because he died. Quite frankly, because he died. And so like, and because of his status, like R. Kelly, I feel like can't really hold a candle to Michael Jackson. Neither can Diddy. Like, and these men are, high up there. They got status, but I don't think they could light a flame, you know what I'm saying, to what the impact he had. And so like, I'm gonna just tell y'all, I'm not telling you to, this isn't gonna be where I open up a can of worms and try to denounce completely, but I'm gonna just tell you that it was difficult for me to watch that and not feel like I could ignore what I saw, is what I'm trying to tell you, because there was a lot of kids, that were mentioned over the course of that documentary. There was a lot of abuse that they talked about, and it was a lot of situations that were hard to look past, essentially. And I know there have been several different documentaries that have happened, but I just think at the end of the day, it also just brought up interesting things that happen to celebrities and humans alike when they aren't given proper childhoods without abuse, and like the impact that has, you know what I mean, and what that can do. But on the flip side of that, Dolores Huerta, she mentioned how when she was young, a young person herself, how the abuse took place with Cesar Chavez, a person who has high status. I mean, is literally like the pillar of like farm workers' rights. You know what I mean? Somebody that I have highlighted in the past, you know what I mean, and celebrated, and will no longer do that anymore. But we had no idea this person was being celebrated in the public, in the public eye, exalted even, you know what I mean? Honored, like had streets named after him. Okay. And shout out to California, because they definitely took that down. They was like, psych, it will not be Cesar Chavez way anymore. But she definitely made mention to how what the abuse that she endured. And I just think it was incredibly courageous on her part to be able to come forward, right? And be able to say that. Even now, the woman is almost 100, okay? 96. Like, she is 4 years away, okay, from being a century, from having blessed us, with her existence for a century. And she just now came forward with what had happened to her. So not only is that incredible incredible courage to display, but she's also letting us know how difficult it is when a person holds that high of a status and that kind of a position, how much more difficult it makes it for a person to say something, because of course, how much harder is it to be believed when it's something like that? I'm very glad that when it came out now, we had no issue. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people were immediately like, wow, my heart goes out. I had no idea that she was going through any of that. You know what I mean? That she had faced any of that. But had she come forward at the time that the abuse was happening, I don't know that our opinions would have been the same. If we're honest, don't know that she would have been able to get that same support. You know what I mean? And like the same advocacy around her if we, you know, really take a hard look at ourselves. And I definitely think that her case was just a very good depiction and capturing of how difficult it is for survivors to be able to share their stories, you know, knowing what their stories are and what their truths are, but being able to share that with other people and be taken seriously for it. Because, you know, that's the other thing. Like, that's always sometimes the hardest part, is not only the, you know, being believed, but being taken seriously and being given the proper attention that, you know, we need in those cases, and being able to have the right response, you know, at the end of the day, for those things to be driven forward. So those, you know, is what made up, you know, a big portion of my sexual assault, you know, awareness month experience this, you know, past month. And it was definitely, I sat with that, you know, for a lot, but I've been very happy to have opportunities to bring awareness more to that, to have more conversations around that, and to now be having that conversation with you. And so I know it definitely brought up a lot for me, and, you know, for any other folks that also felt some way about it, please know that I would love to hold space for you. You know what I mean? And, you know, let's work through it. You know what I mean? Let's talk through it. But, you know, definitely I would love to, you know, like I said, I want nothing more than to give a shout out to her and all survivors alike. You know, all of your stories, you know, of course matter. Your existence matters beyond belief. But for you to have ever faced something like that, and any time where you were not given a positive response, trust and believe, like, my heart goes out to you. And just know that there are individuals like myself who will not stand for that and would never want that to be the experience that you receive. But also, with that being said, I am in my denim, for those who can see me. And so most recently we did celebrate what is known as Denim Day. And for those who do not know the history, Peace Over Violence for the past 24 years has held like movements in this honor, have held demonstrations, you know, have uplifted it. But it was in honor of an 18-year-old who was assaulted by her driving instructor. And the person was convicted of the rape, but he did appeal the conviction, and a judge did allow the decision to be overturned, the ruling to be overturned, because he said that the jeans that she had on were way too tight, and so she must have helped him take them off, y'all. She must have helped him. How the hell? But that is what he said. And so he believed it. He overturned it. And so every year in protest, we definitely take part in Denim Day. And I have had the pleasure of, when I took part in this recent leadership experience called Rise and Lead, my sisters that are in that program, shout out to y'all. I got to see way more of us, you know what I mean, like, that support this movement. I got to invite others to be a part of it. And for everyone that took part in it, and hopefully will take part in the future, thank you. You know what I mean? Cannot thank you for your support enough, because we can't do that enough, right? Like, we can't unite ourselves enough around these issues. We can't stand taller and stronger enough around these things that are happening. And we definitely cannot arm ourselves enough with knowledge, you know what I'm saying, with community and with advocacy, you know, when it comes to these things that take place. And so I had an incredible sexual assault awareness month. If you didn't, and maybe you know, had not taken it before, maybe this is your first step. But I'm looking forward to continuing to have more conversations around that. Like I said, bring more awareness around that, but just continue to take our stand in our fight and stand in solidarity with other survivors and other efforts to support them. And so look out for Mental Health Awareness Month. We're going to make sure that we do it big for that. I also am looking forward to doing the Dope Dad series again in the future. You know, we will do it. So, hey, if you know some dope dads, let me know. I am looking. And I'm going to make sure I put it out on my socials that I am looking for dope dads to interview for this year. So let me know. But speaking of those socials, you can always find me at Santana Says with 1_ on Instagram or TikTok. I'm also on LinkedIn. You know what I'm saying? I'm on Facebook, Melissa Santana. The podcast, of course, course, you can find it, as you have. So I hope you continue to support it. But if you also want to email me about anything related to the podcast, it is Santana Says podcast at gmail.com. So whichever way you want to find me, y'all, please reach out. I would love to hear from you. But as always, I also appreciate you. You know what I mean? I can't thank you enough. And so, please continue to tune in. Please continue to support, share, like, whatever you can do, subscribe. But help us out on our road to 100 episodes. We can't wait. Hoping to do it, celebrate it with a bang when we get to that point. But until we get there, we're going to keep striving. We're going to keep working, and we're going to keep, pushing everything forward. So thank you so very much.